All right, friend of the program, Bay Area legend, Tim Kawakami, back in the building. Tim, thanks so much for hopping on, man. We appreciate the time.
Good to be with you guys. What's going on?
Oh, just hanging out. I honestly, I have more Warriors questions than I do 49ers questions after they beat the Celtics last night.
Yep.
Trace Jackson Davis going to start now or what?
I would start him. Does not mean that Steve Kerr's going to start him. I think it's going to be a virtual start. I think kind of like he's not going to be actually named as a starter would be my guess, although I don't think it's out of the question. And he will end up playing starters minutes. And, you can do that because without Draymond, they have some minutes open. So I think he's going to close unless he's not playing real well or Looney or Sarge is playing great. And so he's just going to get that Draymond kind of spot to close, maybe 20, 25 minutes. But you know what? He's capable of throwing up a clunker too, right? I mean, it's not going. I don't think he's going to play like if he plays like this for the rest of the way, he will be a starter very soon. I think even like what Kerr doesn't want is to lose his vets. He doesn't want, he was resisting even like benching Wiggins until he did it because he didn't want to lose them, just mentally, and he really didn't want to do it to Clay and hasn't taken him out of the starting lineup. Took him out of the closing lineup a couple of games ago, but he didn't lose him. I think he might have fired Clay up. He doesn't want to lose Looney. Like if you pull him out and maybe Looney's like, oh my God, but I don't think Looney's like that guy. So my guess is Trace Jackson Davis goes in the starting lineup. Then when Draymond comes back, it might be like that's when you get stuck a little bit because you have four guys: Sarge, Looney, Draymond, and Trace Jackson Davis. We'll have to see how TJD and Draymond kind of fit together. That's going to be a question that they'll have to answer down the road. But I think he's going to end up getting starter minutes at least until Draymond is back. And even then, I think he should get starter minutes. He gives him something different.
I went on the Warriors World podcast recently and compared Trace Jackson Davis to Brock Purdy. He's the Warriors center.
Wow.
Version of Brock Purdy in that, super experienced college guy. The Warriors drafted someone else to be the center highly. There's sort of some parallels to make there, but
definitely the center they drafted before is the big parallel.
Right.
I don't know. We'll see. Listen, I've been high on Jackson Davis, but not as high as Warriors fans are, and I think there are limitations to him. Like it's the difference between what he is and what Looney is. That's where you really feel it because Looney's hit a wall. There's something going on with him. Maybe it's this consecutive game streak. Maybe he needs a break. He's just not lively. And he's not super lively even on the best of times with him. So, wow, Biderman, you're taking this to another level. Wow.
That was my weak attempt at a transition to 49ers talk. So,
wait a minute, we're talking 49ers?
Yeah. This is a Niners podcast after all. But no, so like I think you have a very unique perspective given that, you've covered the NFL for a long time. You've covered obviously a lot of elite teams, even in other sports. And zooming out a little bit, and I'm not trying to put the cart before the horse because ultimately Kyle Shanahan is going to be judged by Super Bowls, but based on the way the season is going so far, and again, there's a lot of football to be played. We're not even in the playoffs yet, but based on how things are going so far, the 49ers just seem like they're at a different level than just about every other team in the league. And you can look at contenders around the NFL and say, the Chiefs have their issues. The Bills might be the scariest team in the AFC right now, but they're not even in one of the top 7 seeds. Just the way the 49ers are constructed and the way they've been built, it seems like they're sort of on a collision course to the Super Bowl, assuming, health and everything like that. But given that you covered the Eagles in the 80s, you've covered the Lakers during the Shaq and Kobe times. You've obviously been very close to the Warriors during their dynastic era. With what Kyle Shanahan has built this season and the DVOA numbers, for whatever those are worth, say that this is the best 49ers team in their history and the best NFL team from a DVOA perspective since the 2007 Patriots. I'm curious, like, what you think makes this 49ers team up there when it comes to, the discussion of elite teams in any sport, and if Kyle Shanahan might deserve more credit that he's getting for team building and culture building and the way the 49ers have been constructed to get to this point.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say, I've always thought that about Shanahan, right? I mean, it's hard for me to say he should get more credit. I give him a lot of credit, he and Lynch. I think have built something really sustainable. I thought that 3, 4, 5 years ago. I thought it was heading in that direction. They accumulate talent. They might miss here or there, but you just look at who they've added year after year, in what positions. It's hard to argue that this is not the best, roster in the NFL, and it's been moving in that direction really essentially since like 18 or so. What I see, what stands out to me about them is that they're so talented, certainly with the playmakers, and they're tough. Those two things. So there's teams that have all these playmakers and are not tough, and there's tough teams that don't have those playmakers. And I always like offensive-minded coaches who also respect the defense. And what is Kyle Shanahan like? He can't help it. He just keeps drafting defensive linemen. I like that about an offensive-minded coach. I've been around offensive-minded coaches who don't want any part of it. Mike Martz would never want to draft a defensive player. I've heard that about him, and we just look at his record when he was a head coach. He just didn't want him. He wanted, receivers. Shanahan is kind of the other. He's almost the other way. Like, he loves playmakers. We know they've invested a lot of money in their playmakers, but it's almost like I need the defensive line to be super talented. That's what I need right there. Also need a left tackle. Also, we know that the picks that they invested in McCaffrey now, the money they've invested in him, but that's kind of like almost to the side. And tough-minded offensive guys who can speak to quarterbacks, but also be in that room and speak to 53. Right? That's the cliche. Can they speak to 53 men? Can you get in that room and command not just the offensive guys, but have the defensive guys respect you and coach like that, right? Running the ball is what defenses want from their offense. They don't want to screw up, and they don't, that's kind of into the big picture why he doesn't call fake punts and the little things. It was kind of funny when he, joked that why doesn't he call fake punts? He doesn't want to fuck up the game. He doesn't want to risk something that screws up the field for his carefully managed offense and exposes the defense to something that they shouldn't. They should play the full field, put his defense on a full field, and they're not going to give up that many points now. They haven't been great in the last few games. Maybe some understandable reasons for that. But I think it's the combination, and I don't know. I would guess, those great 49er teams would be the real comparison. I covered the Eagles when they, were getting good. Reggie White, Jerome Brown, they did not get over the hump there. They had the toughness, did not have the offensive playmakers. Randall Cunningham was just getting into his own, wasn't quite there yet. Obviously, the Lakers, Shaq and Kobe, that's a whole other thing. Warriors during the dynasties, kind of a different thing. But I'd say there's some similarities to the playmakers the Warriors have had, the guys who could beat you at the top. But then the defensive toughness, Draymond Green's very popular name to discuss right now, but Andre Iguodala, some other guys. Who knows what this 49 team is capable of? It's tough to compare eras and across sports, but that's the specialness, I think, in this team, that they're going to be tough. They're going to hit you. They're going to stop the run and run the ball, and they have all this other stuff. And I think maybe that's taken. 2019 was a really good team. Like, that was Biderman. You're around that team a lot, but they had no Christian McCaffrey, right? Then they had Jimmy Garoppolo, but not Brock Purdy. Like, you look at, they go, that was a really good team. That was 7 minutes away from a Super Bowl. Jimmy Garoppolo was 7 minutes away from being the Super Bowl MVP. But they clearly had some things that they lacked, clearly, at the top of the level. This team's got that. I don't know what you would say. Where would you say this team lacks? Maybe at corner, but Lenore's pretty damn good right now and can move inside. And Ambry Thomas is not bad as a third corner on the outside. Yeah. I'm not sure. We would have said offensive line on that right side. Maybe that will get them. But the right side, you put Feliciano in there, that right side looks a little bit better now. The 19, you could say, like, this 19 was a basic team. They're going to hit you. They're going to run the ball. If they throw it, they can, there's been times when they threw the ball, but you can't just go throw it. How many times has Shanahan started games this season with Brock Purdy throwing the ball 2 or 3, 4, 5 times? It's been notable, and that never happened with Garoppolo. It never happened.
Philadelphia.
Exactly.
Does it feel to you like Kyle Shanahan is trying to get Brock Purdy the MVP award?
I don't know. I don't think Shanahan. I mean, maybe at the end of the season, I think he would do that. I just think he feels comfortable with him. Like with Shanahan, what he would not do is jeopardize a victory in his mind, whatever how we think of it.
Sure.
Where like I'm doing something that we could screw up the game, and I screwed it up because I was trying to get somebody an accolade. He'll do that maybe at the end of a game. I don't think he's his openers are really precious to him. And they do well with them. I don't think he's messing around with that just to try to trick around an award. Frankly, I think he'd like it to be McCaffrey. That's if you had to ask, if you shot him with truth serum, I think he'd say McCaffrey. Again, don't aggregate this anybody, but I do think that like he thinks the MVP is way off to the side. It's not, it'd be nice. If it's going to be awarded to somebody, he'd want it to be awarded to a 49er player. But like, it's not like Debo is special to him. Like there's lost so many special people to him. I don't think he'd ever go, this game plan is to get Brock Purdy the MVP. If it comes down to it and it's in the last, they're up 2 touchdowns and it doesn't matter, maybe that extra stat would be something that he can be in his mind. So yeah, let's go get it for him. But I don't think they did try to get, McCaffrey that touchdown to keep his streak.
Right. Yeah.
And that was very out of character, right? And when have we seen him do that? You have to have a big lead to do that. You have to have special players to do that. But it didn't really work out either, by the way. It's just not Kyle's thing. He's not like an awards guy. That's kind of the ethos of the team. They talk about it. They want their guys to win, but it isn't like, let's go get the award. And it just fits my mentality, which is, why do we talk about awards so much? It's about winning. Like winning gets you the award. The award doesn't get you winning. So, and I know people do talk about it and it's something to discuss. I get a little weary of it. It's like, oh, because this guy did this, he could be rookie of the year. No, because he did that, he's good. Good helps winning. Winning gets you the award. The award is the last thing over there. And so many times it's, oh, that great throw means that Brock Purdy could be MVP. No, the great throw was just good. That's what it was good. You want to be good more than you want to get the award. But that's me. I get it. I understand it. It's good conversation. I just kind of sometimes have a little backlash in my mind saying the point isn't the award. The point is the trophy at the end of the year, which is the one that the team wins. That's the point.
So I won't ask you about who your MVP is.
Who would you vote for?
Given everything you
well,
just
I think
said.
I tipped it. I think McCaffrey is so important, but every one of those guys is so important.
Sure. So with Brock Purdy, it started obviously as an unlikely story. Like this guy was not expected to even make the team. Then it was, he's not. Can he continue to play to keep the offense playing at a high enough level to win playoff games? He's proven to do that. He's playing this year at a level where we talk about him as an MVP candidate and maybe perhaps a favorite. But like, do you see, given everything you know about sports and the athletes that you've covered, do you see a possibility for greatness in Brock Purdy? Is there anything about him to you that says he can ascend to somebody who ends up in the Steve Young, Joe Montana conversation? Assuming obviously the caveat here is he has to win a Super Bowl or multiple to be a part of that. But are there things that he does in his makeup that reminds you of some of those superstar championship type players?
Yeah, I mean, I'll go to the one he goes to. Is Drew Brees. And I think he's got a lot of Drew Brees in him. Like I've kind of thought that in my head, and then other people started mentioning it. And I guess he told the Fox I guess with CBS broadcasters, it's very confusing that Drew Brees was the guy he watched, and he's told me he would watch that film. And I talked to Willie Snead, and Willie Snead's like he's practice squad receiver, used to play with the Saints with Drew Brees. He goes, yeah, he came up to me. He goes, yeah, I remember watching you. He's like, what? You were watching me on the Saints when he wasn't even doing much with the Saints because of the Drew Brees stuff. I think he's got some Drew Brees in him. I think he's got that kind of, not a big guy, and I think he's more athletic than Brees. I think he's got that precision, that focus, that leadership. I know defensive coaches who love Drew Brees. That's like Dennis Allen. I'm not a great source at this point, but when he was coaching the Raiders, and very good defensive coach, not a great head coach. He wanted Drew Brees. Drew Brees. I want every player to be like Drew Brees. And I think that's the defensive mentality that kind of works with this team. Like, you're tough, right, man? What did they say when he went down? Oh, Brock said he was okay, and I know he's tough, so he was going to be back in the game. Guess what? He's back in the game. He doesn't do stupid stuff. He is incredibly focused. He knows the playbook. That all works on this team. And this team is going to be very good for a while, I would guess. He's 23 years old, by the way. I guess he's about to turn 24, but he's still 23 years old. He's only going to get better. He's better than Breeze was when he was 23. So to take it away from the 49ers conversation, because that always gets into mythology, that always gets into 4 or 5 Super Bowl, like, that's hard to talk about any quarterback who hasn't won a Super Bowl in that world. Now, Breeze has, but it's not in the Montana young. That gets tough. Manning, Brady. I'm going to say Drew Brees. I was saying Russell Wilson a little earlier because that adds the mobility to this. And Wilson was good young, and Wilson was on a defensive-minded team. And he irritated the defensive-minded team much more than I think Brock Purdy ever will. But I think a Breeze, Wilson, I think he's right there with those. He's headed to being right there. He's going to have to win a Super Bowl. We know this. But that's the kind of quarterback I think he's going to be. And that's really high up there. Like, they're both going to be in the Hall of Fame. Those quarterbacks. Yeah. Is Brock Purdy going to be in the Hall of Fame? You got to sustain it. You got to keep doing it year after year after year. But he's like, Russell Wilson was good early. This is Brock Purdy's good early. Drew Brees sustained it for a long period of time, was incredibly accurate, and could be, he could put 40 up on you, whatever game you want to, and was set with a great offensive coach with Sean Payton. It just seems like, interestingly, now Russell Wilson is now being coached by Sean Payton. I hadn't even made that connection yet. So I think that those would be the two I compare him to, and those are two really great quarterbacks. It kind of gets dangerous. You put Montana into anything, it gets dangerous.
Right. Yeah, it's sticky.
Yeah, it's just like we're talking about a god, certainly in this region, and I don't like comparing guys to something that people think are unassailable, and probably is. I grew up in the Montana era, so I'm just going to go and a couple other guys, and those are the two guys I would go to. And that's a high level, and I think he can get there. Absolutely, I think the commitment to it. I think the precision, the accuracy. Like, some of the balls that look bad, and I know he's put some within intercepting range. I'm not saying every ball he throws is safe, but sometimes when you go back and, like, why was that ball thrown so wildly off when everything else seems to be right on line? He's avoiding the interception. He's throwing away from the safety. And I think I've heard him kind of confirm that. He doesn't want to excuse himself on some of those, but he is throwing the ball away from the defense. He's anticipating the receiver and he's anticipating the defense. And there were quarterbacks who can't do either. Clearly, we saw one of them, against 49ers was throwing it to the wrong team. Who, I like Kyler, but he's not Brock Purdy.
No, he's not. You said something interesting in there. Talking about the 49ers being a defensive-minded team, and that was so prevalent in 2019, 2020, there was all the injuries and stuff, but even 21 and 22, it was like, man, this is a defensive team. And it feels like this year there's so much focus on the offense because what their offense is doing is historic that it kind of goes by the wayside that they're like number 2 in points allowed, and I think number 8 or 9 in yards allowed. Like, they're still a really good defense. Is this still a defensive-minded team to you, or is this an offensive-minded team now?
I think it's tilting a little more offense than defense. I think, we haven't seen those sack, the big sack days. We've seen good sack days, but not seen the huge sack days. I think, D'Amico and Saleh were part of that, and they were so emotional, and Steve Wilkes isn't that. Maybe we're missing it sometimes in meeting rooms, but also it was because the quarterback. It was like they weren't scoring 30 points a game, right? They just weren't doing that. This team, you can just roll out the ball. If they're playing an average defense to even a pretty good defense, they can put 30 up. Then I just said they're going to score 4 touchdowns. Like, I've rarely felt that about a Jimmy Garoppolo led team. Not again. We're doing this now, but I want to bash Garoppolo. They won a lot of games. They were a very good team with Garoppolo, but they weren't scoring 4 touchdowns. You couldn't just say they're scoring 4 touchdowns. This team is going to score 4 touchdowns. And if you score 4 touchdowns and you have a good defense, not a great defense, you don't need a great defense. You just need a good defense. You're going to win. They scored 4 touchdowns against the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. By the way, would this offense score 4 touchdowns against the Chiefs? Yes. It would score 4 touchdowns against the Chiefs. They would have won the Super Bowl with this offense.
I agree.
Just all things being equal, just put this offense out there. This is different. It feels different. I think, how many times was Kittle, we had to ask him, why can't you score more? How do you win? Oh, yeah, we just don't turn the ball over, don't make mistakes, and score more touchdowns. So he's said that repeatedly. Now they're not, they're doing that stuff. Most of their stars now are on offense because they've added these things. So I'll just say it's a kind of defensive-minded team that has an offense that fits that defense and can be explosive. And that's freaking dangerous for the rest of the league. But they are, hey, it's offensive-minded head coach. That maybe it was always going to head this way, but I think you go back to that 2016 team, which I do, of the Falcons, which is really important because that was his best team that he's ever coached. I think got to the Super Bowl. When he got to the 49ers, what did he want? Defense, because that team could not stop the Patriots when it came down to it. Yep. Offense screwed up, obviously, at the end, but not that much. The fumble and some of the play calls that didn't really burn clock, but it wasn't that much. It was the fact that Tom Brady went right through that defense. And you look at where they focused their draft picks, for sure, where they paid their money certainly in the early years of Shanahan and Lynch, it was, I got to get a defense. And he liked the 49ers at some point because that roster was terrible, but they had Buckner and Armstead. That was one of the reasons he wanted that job. And I could add to it, which they certainly have done. So you look at that, this is going to be an offensive team, maybe, as we're talking, but the heart of it is still, the soul of it is, but we can still be physical. But we have to be physical, and physicality starts with that defensive line. And, they're always going to invest in defensive line. So that it's a combo thing, but leaning more offense because the explosion, the charisma of that group. But it's still, in its heart, it wants to be a defensive team.
Real quick, Chris, one of my favorite things was Kyle Shanahan on your podcast, Tim, and you were talking about that Super Bowl and him, how he kind of views it. And he's like, man, the offense didn't give up 500 yards and 25 points in 12 minutes. I was like, damn, that's a great point.
That is how he feels. That is absolutely. And you've just seen how it flows to the way he's running this team. It was I got to I can have all the offense I want. If we can't keep the other team from scoring 30 in the second half, we're not winning that game. Yep. And what happened in the Super Bowl that he got to against the Chiefs, that it wasn't all the defense's fault, but it wasn't able to stop Mahomes. Now, you also want a quarterback who can match Mahomes, but you can just feel it as the gut. It was horrible for him to experience that. But he was like, we need defensive players out there to stop that. And it just did not happen. The Falcons were an okay defense that year. They were not great. And once Brady got going, they were cooked. There was really not a lot they can do. So, but thank you for mentioning my podcast, Kyle.
Of course. Shout out.
So we'd be remiss if we didn't even mention Monday's game against the Ravens, which is shaping up to maybe be the most interesting regular season game they played this year, given how good the Ravens seem to be and their place in the AFC. Without stepping on what you might write leading up to or what you might write after the fact, what's the significance of Monday's game in your mind, given that it is just a regular season game, but it seems like it's bigger than a normal one given where these teams are at in their current seasons?
I guess so. I don't know. I might be a little bit of a sour one on this one. I don't think it's that big a game because it's out of conference. You got so many games. Could it be a Super Bowl preview? Maybe, but there's so much to play before that. We don't know if either team's going to make it there. Who's going to be hurt when they're on the way? Monday night, Christmas. I think it's just going to be interesting. Talent to talent. I'm going to want to watch that. Is Lamar going to be able to run around? Are they going to run the ball on the 49ers, who have been not looking great against the run recently. Can the 49ers? I think the 49ers are going to move the ball on the Ravens. I think I'm a broken record here, but I think 49ers are going to move the ball on anybody. But I think they're going to move the ball on the Ravens pretty good. So, if they hit a wall and they can't score against the Ravens, I think but that's interesting. Whoever it would be against, would have been interesting if it happened against the Cardinals, and almost more interesting because the Cardinals is a divisional team. I kind of take these out of conference games, depending on when they come, a little bit differently because, it's a unique situation, and then it's a prime time game. It's a Christmas game, and the reality is 49ers do not need this win. I think they're going to win, but they need to win the 2 NFC games. They win their 2 NFC games. They're the number 1 seed. They would rather win all 3. But if you had to pick the ones you want to win NFC games theoretically. So I do want to see them with Lamar on the field and how that looks. I think they'll be fine. Maybe not. We'll see. I think they might have something similar to the way they defended Jalen Hurts, which was do not let him get out of the pocket. See what he throws. I think Lamar is throwing the ball better than Jalen has been, but we shall see. Can they make him nervous around there? Can they make him just have to bolt and then have Fred Warner ready there to make a tackle? That I'm curious with. I just don't think there's going to be a lot to be figured out and learned from the 49ers offense versus their defense. I think the 49ers overmatch them. They just have that, they have too much for almost everybody. And I don't know what's the defense that you would say, man, I want to see. Like Eagles theoretically was, but that was gone. Dallas I think is the next best defense in the league. I don't know. Cleveland, we saw what happened there when they sent out, Debo and Trent Williams and didn't have McCaffrey feeling too good. So I guess that would be the one. And I don't know if they're going to be there at the end for the 49ers. So I'm curious about this game, but I don't think it's this big epic tilt. I just don't. And maybe I'm looking at it wrong. I just always think the Eagles game, that was the epic tilt. The Cowboys game. Those were the big ones. You don't even know who you're going to end up playing in the Super Bowl. You just don't know. And Lamar has not been great in the playoffs. I think Baltimore probably is the best team in the AFC, but you put them on the field with Patrick Mahomes, and we know how bad the Chiefs have looked lately, but I'm going to go with Patrick Mahomes. I think Mahomes is going to be the one at the end. And if they were playing the Chiefs, I probably would feel differently about it. If the Chiefs were 11-3 and the Chiefs are coming, then I might go, okay, I really want to see what this looks like.
Yeah.
The Ravens, I don't know. Like, even if the Ravens beat them, I might not. I'd say, I think the 49ers can figure out a way to beat this team. I don't know that I would, I think the Chiefs would be a different thing. Chiefs, Dolphins, maybe, maybe the Bills. I'm just not thinking this one because it's 1 versus 1. The Ravens, are they? I'm just going to be a little bit of a sourpuss on this one and say, I'm just curious. I want to see who plays well, but it doesn't feel like the one that's a Titanic matchup for me. It just doesn't. The Eagles was the big Titanic matchup.
All right, very good. Tim, thanks so much for your time. The TK Show is the podcast. You can find it wherever you get your pods. I was just looking at already you got interviews in here with Mike Dunleavy. You got Matt Barrows. You're doing stuff with LA Times, Dylan Hernandez. Bob Melvin just dropped. Yeah, really, really good stuff, Tim, and we appreciate you as always.
I do have to say, Kyle Madson, Levi Stadium is symmetrical. I don't know what the hell. When you were saying that, I was like, I realized, what the hell? I think he's right. And but Bees, am I wrong? Do kickers talk about there's a close end?
So the wind, the wind is definitely coming. I think it comes from the north side.
From the north, shoots through there. It does not seem to affect the. I don't know. But here I'm wrong. Because I've been noting, hey, it seems like the close end is the one where the ball's more affected because kickers tend to miss more there. But I swear I've heard kickers say, the closed end, and I'm right there with them. I think it's because they do put stuff over there and that, there's things there that make you think in your head. I don't know, Kyle. It was embarrassing for me because I try to be right. I try to be on top of things, and it was you.
I feel like I'm never right about anything. So I was like, I don't know what I'm looking at. Okay, I'm dumb then.
I think I've had conversations with Jake Moody where we're talking about the closed end, like we're both saying it. Like it's like one of those like, is everything I think wrong? Like,
no, I think the wind might create a scenario where one end might feel closed. Because the wind generally comes from one direction. But I was surprised because, like, Tim, you and I play golf, and you're so good at like describing holes when I haven't played a course before. I was like, Tim knows like conditions and like, you know, the lay of the land. I was like, a closed end, like it's the same.
Well, I'm just trying, like, it also is possible that because the press box is on the right side, we don't really see that opening. So I'm always thinking, I guess that's part of it. This was shocking to me. Can you imagine? I just like all of a sudden like, fucking Madson's right. What the hell is going on here? My universe doesn't work out anymore. So I'm gonna zing you back with your Lions are gonna run the table. Lions are gonna run the table.
It's tough for me. That was a tough take for your.
When you were saying, I go, was he talking about the Detroit Lions are gonna run the table? Is that what he's saying?
Yeah.
So, that's my petty little shot back at you. So.
Well, that's a deep cut. We know you listen. We appreciate you listening, and obviously we appreciate you coming on the podcast. So hopefully we can do it again in the not too distant future, and hopefully the weather will allow us to get back on the golf course sometime.
I think that'll happen, Beats, and we'll try to get the guy who I keep hearing about this 9-iron, whatever the hell you hit into the hole with that park. famous. They sing songs about it on the course. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah,
it's a legend at Harding Park.
That's why I hung up my spikes after that. I was like, I'm done.
I do the same. I might do the same. Way to go, guys.
All right,
thanks, Tim. Appreciate it.